So my guest today is Antonio David Lyons, a truly multifaceted artist, actor, playwright, poet, musician, and social activist whose work blends performance with social impact. That's the formal part. Welcome.
Relatively accurate.
Relatively. Actually, talk about that. So when people ask you, what do you do?
Yeah.
What is your answer?
It depends. It depends on who asks. And it depends on the context. Often I say I'm an artist or I'm a creator. And then I'll talk about I'm an actor, musician, a poet. I'm also a little self-depreciating around the musician part. I'll be like, I'm a bit of a musician, and a poet, and a bit of a dancer, and then I'll talk about some of the social activism work, and then sometimes education work. More so now, mostly in circles where people are in the fine arts space. So they're engaging with Antonio, the executive director of the Valerie J Maynard Foundation, or they're engaging me at Georgetown University as the director of an initiative at Georgetown. So it's rare that my worlds kind of collide, where people get the full scope of what I do. Yeah. I'm trying to get better.
How do you make sense of that in your own head?
I don't know if I really think about it.
Okay.
Some things are like sort of very unconscious, right? You just do what you do, right? And I think that by nature, I've always been a sort of compartmentalized person, right? Like I've always lived in lots of different worlds, like even growing up. So my father's from Jamaica, my mother's family's from the Bahamas. I went to school that was primarily African-American. I grew up in a neighborhood that was primarily Caribbean. So like, the conversations, the accents in the house were different than that in the streets. Do you know what I mean? Or at schools. And then when you're with different family members, like now I'm with the Jamaicans, now I'm with the Bahamians, now I'm with the Americans, you don't quite realize how this multiplicity of identity lives integrated within yourself. But in practicality, you're often exhibiting or engaging with different parts of culture in different ways, depending on where you are, who you're with. And so I guess with my work, it's the same way. With my creativity, it's the same way. Often when I'm with my musician people, and they may reference like, oh, I saw you on this thing, but we're not really dwelling on that thing. We're like focused on that. If I'm acting, like it's just really about that production. And you may get into some other conversations outside of the work, but this is really not quite expansive. And then with the work at the foundation, it's such a whole new world in some ways for me. And because the responsibility that I carry and the sort of thinking through that and engaging with people who are not connected to these other parts of my life, there's never really a reason to pull it in until people get curious. Or you're working with staff or you're working with interns or other collaborators, and they may overhear a phone call, you know what I mean? And you're talking about a production thing that you're doing, or somebody happens to Google you and they go, you didn't tell us you make music, you have albums. You know what I mean? You were in Hotel Rwanda, and you're like, it's just what I do. Like, what else do you do? And then you kind of feel like a bit on the spotlight, and also you feel like a bit of pride as well. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, no, I do. You ain't know all this was in here.
But it's actually interesting because you're now navigating spaces that feel separate or divorced from that side of you. You're having those kind of experiences. Whereas kind of for me, like because of your context, it's always been the diversity of it, right?
Yeah.
That what was interesting for me is like the new space, like working foundation, like what feels like, proper job in inverted commas, or like real work in inverted commas.
Yeah.
But that adding that to a certain extent, adding that to already rich basket. And it's like, it makes sense. It's like, okay, you've done these things.
Yeah.
It kind of makes sense. Like that you'd also add that.
Yeah.
But people in that world kind of being very, not necessarily, it's not judgmental, but being very blinkered, like very,
Yeah, but I think a lot of us are, right? Like we meet people as we meet them, right? And so, and unless there's some other reason to gain a broader context of an individual, and most people aren't digging through the internet to really understand who the person is that they're working with, or they're connected with, because their need for relationship doesn't quite go beyond the current work that you're doing. And it's not a requirement, right? And so, there was this really interesting moment at Georgetown. I'm just kind of doing the work that I do there. And there was a pretty senior level person at Georgetown who out of nowhere was just like, "You were in Star Trek." Right. And he loves Star Trek, right? And so I was like, I've seen every episode, and it's like he wanted to dig into this really deep dive conversation about that work. And on one level, it felt really uncomfortable because I was just like, I'm here creating workshops around racial justice issues and using theater to do that. And we're having these very sort of academic, informed conversations about how do we strategize implementing this work with faculty, staff, and students. What's the reach of that work? What are some of the themes we're going to be exploring? And now we're talking about Star Trek, right? But what it did do for me was that it actually allowed me to relax a little bit, because I think that sometimes when you're in these spaces, you feel like you have to perform according to the space, right? And I try to do that very little, but when he mentioned that, I realized, like, while I wasn't wholly performing, that there was a part of me that was performing the academia version of Antonio, who was also, on faculty as a lecturer, in addition to doing this job as director of this initiative. And I was able to go like, cool, this can also help us build personal relationship, right? That will undergird this work, which I think is also really important, because often we don't really think about when we're doing business with people, that the business, the work is going to be there. But what's more important that will sustain the business and the work is personal relationship. Like, how invested are you in the thing that you're doing, whether it's me or the person I'm engaging with. And so it did allow for that. And I was really, really grateful, and then it was, another moment where we were at a thing and he's like, now telling people, right? And then so I was like, okay, we're in here now. We've established a relationship, but he's really sweet. And he's been really, really supportive of the work. So it was really, really great,
I'm glad I'm not the only one that just randomly goes, "Hey, were you in this thing?" Because I remember, I think it was to the point of slight irritation, although you carried it well. Me going, "American History X," and harping on that for a couple of years, and telling everybody we met, "No, he was in American History X."
That wasn't bad. It was actually good, but the thing I had to learn with American History X is that people always go like, they feel like they know you from the thing, or they know you from something. And then they realize, oh, you were in American History X. And then they're trying to place you within the film, right? And so people are like, well, who are you in American History X, right? And that's the moment it becomes awkward. And I had to learn very early on how to phrase what that moment was without traumatizing myself. Right. Because to go into
I remember it, because that's like, I actually don't remember most of the other scenes, and I enjoyed the film, and it was a powerful film.
Yeah.
But I remember that because and that's probably why I also kind of harassed you about it, because it's stuck.
Yeah.
Like I'm talking about it and I can see the scene and what the scene meant.
Yeah.
And then there was New York Undercover, which, and I was because I was New York Undercover obsessed.
Yeah.
And those are the days of scheduled programming. So I used to make sure that I was home. I think it was like a Monday at 8:00 or something, like that I was home on time to watch it, and kind of realizing that later.
Yeah. That was my first TV job. That was, New York Undercover. Yeah.
When did you decide, or when did this idea of being an actor, was that the first entry point? And if it was, when did you decide, actually, this is what I want to do?
First entry point into
the creative world,
No. My first entry point into the creative world was dancing and poetry.
Okay.
And not any sort of formalized training, no classes, no whatever, but I just always loved to dance. Dance has always been a place of healing for me. Like, I remember being younger, like a teenager, and like my mom would piss me off, and it's a Caribbean household, you couldn't talk back, you could be looking crazy, and then you had to control that. But the only way I could sort of get rid of this energy, this upsetness, was to dance. And I would just dance until I was like sweating, and she'd be like, go sit down somewhere, why are you always just dancing around? But I was like, it was either I'm going to be the bad child or I'm going to dance this out. And so and it was always like sort of like popular dances and the songs that came out, and none of those songs currently are like, politically correct. I grew up in Miami, bass music. Bass line is Luke Skywalker, Two Live Crew. If you know any of those songs, you understand what the lyrical content was and how elevated it was. And but that's where I come from. So I would just be dancing, and then and also because I couldn't talk back, and I was just always processing so many things from like a very early age. I was just right, just right about whatever I was thinking about, whatever was going on, whatever I was feeling, and read like literature as a young child was like always my go-to, my escape. I'm like, I don't think I was even in high school yet, and I was reading James Baldwin and Paul Laurence Dunbar and Toni Morrison. It's just me and my brother, we consumed the library. Okay. And my mother would use, she'd be like, you can't look at TV. And I'm like, okay, well, get a book, and she was always encouraging. We had a library in our neighborhood that was like maybe a 15-minute walk, and now I'm thinking about it, like that neighborhood, growing up in that neighborhood reminded me a lot of sort of being in the Caribbean or being in South Africa, because my neighborhood was like all Black. Like you go to the library, all librarians Black. They got a lot of Black books. They're nurturing you. They're encouraging you. Everybody within a sort of 30-mile radius knew my mother. She was a community development person. And so, there was such a rich environment to grow up in that nurtured my creativity in really indirect ways and unintentional ways. We at the park that was like a 5-minute walk from our house, we would have an annual Goombay Festival, which is a Bahamian festival that descendants of Bahamians brought over. And it was always sort of like this color, this music, this activity, and growing up in a place like South Florida, which is very similar in terms of climate to Durban, there's always sort of this lush green, like, so just a visual landscape that was always very ripe as well. So all of that nurtured my creativity. And I think that's where things began. And when I actually went to undergrad, which was in Southern University in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, complete culture shock. My goal was I was an econ major who wanted to go to law school. And I quickly found that I was not good at economics. And so going into my sophomore year, I changed my major to theater. I had been asked by Dr. Joyce O'Rourke, who was a speech teacher in the theater department, who also was a coach for the debate team. And I'd done debate and forensics in high school. And when I got to Southern University, because of the culture shock, I was like, I need to do something. And I read that they had a debate team, and the debate team actually traveled. And so I was like, if I'm going to survive, I think I need to do that, and I need to be able to get out and come back. And Dr. Joyce O'Rourke, she would coach. I was doing oral interpretation as well as other types of debate. And she invited me to audition for a play. And that changed everything.
How did you end up deciding in economics? So I majored in economics. So
dope. So I had a teacher in high school who was, I can't believe I'm saying this. At some point, she had worked for the FBI, and she was an econ major, and she started talking about how, and as econ could be such a nice grounding place that can lead you in a lot of career paths, including the FBI. I used to watch a lot of James Bond shit. So I was like, I could be a spy. I could be 007 with an econ degree. So Black woman. She was really dope. She didn't quite give me enough information to make, but that's where we started. But I quickly was just like, these C's sliding into D's. It's not a thing. It's not a thing. This is a struggle. It's not my lane. And fortunately, theater found me. So, yeah.
And I mean, what did your mother ever kind of try to influence or guide you in terms of the paths that you're going to take? So, I mean, so my father was an economist, and a business person. So there was no, I'm going to change my major to something else, like
I was a smart child,
like theater.
I was a smart child. So, the interesting thing about my mother, education was really important. Mm-hmm. She learned a lot through experiences that she had that she saw as negative, and was intent and intentional and proactive about making sure she learned those lessons real time and seeded more positive things into her children's lives. She had three boys. I'm the last born. And so she didn't finish college. And she didn't finish college because she had to come home to take care of her mom and her grandmother. But she always was like, education is really important. Have a good plan for your life is really important. And I remember being in high school, she was just like, look, I don't know what you're going to do when you finish high school, but you won't stay here. So meaning at home, in this community, like you'll go and you'll figure something out. And so there were options, and options were college, trade school, or the military, right? But she was like, I just want you to be in the world and, have some sort of structure. And I was really fortunate being the youngest because both my brothers had gone to college. So my oldest brother by my mom is 10 years older than me. The second one, the middle child, he's like 3 years older than me. And so I never really thought about what do I do after high school because the roadmap had already been set. And my brothers were great examples. My oldest brother would come home and he would surprise us. And, he always was very nurturing, to the point where when I got ready to graduate high school, he was like, oh, what colleges did you apply to? Like, where are you going? And I was like, what are you talking about? Right. Like, I didn't know I had to apply. I thought you guys could just go, So he was just like, okay. So he was like, okay, make sure you take these tests, which, they make sure there's this pre-qualification test for college, and, you have to have certain scores. It depends on like how you get in and all this kind of stuff. And then he was like, I'm going to take you to visit some schools. And so he took me to Grambling University, took me to Southern University. And Southern is where he went. And Grambling was somewhere he had a lot of friends, and he liked the school. It was also in Louisiana, very rural for me. Southern was peri-rural in my mind, coming from Miami. Other people consider it like to be a city, but that's why I ended up going. You know, he took me the spring semester where all the parties were happening, and it was a good time. So, but I grew to love it. You know, but my mother, she didn't force us in any particular direction, but she was aware of like, what are you going to do with this thing after you finish, right? And so before I told my mother that I was changing my my major, I thought a lot about it. Like, what is the story I'm going to tell her? Like, what's this narrative going to be? I got to have it. A, B, C, D. I have to have endpoint on. I got to know what's happening after, you know? So I was like, so, you know, I'm going to change to theater. And she was like, what are you going to do with that? I was like, I can always teach. That was respectable. That was something she could understand, because there were no artists in my family.
Yeah.
Right? And so she was like, okay, cool. Right. And even, you know, she was happy that I graduated. She didn't know like what my plan was going to be, but she knew there was something that I could aim towards, that she could understand. But she also didn't ever discourage my art practice. She was often confused by it. She was always asking questions about like, what's the backup plan? Like, how you going to make money? Or how you going to make a living? You know, because she didn't quite, this sort of freelance thing, you know, particularly she'd always been exposed to people who were either entrepreneurial, who owned a business, whether it's a grocery store, like a restaurant, like her grandmother, or worked a 9-to-5 in some particular sort of way. But this idea that you would be an artist that would, in their minds, have some sort of career that seemed unstable and whimsical in some way, or at the whims of the universe, I used to think was just kind of like judgmental, but it was really about care, right? Like, you're a parent, you know, so the idea is like, I want you to be okay. I want you to be able to take care of yourself. I want you to be able to stand on your own in the world. And it took a long time before she was like, I get it, you know. But even in those early days, I remember when I finished undergrad, and I was really upset, because I didn't know what I was going to do after I graduated. Like, I'm about to get this degree, about to walk across the stage. I'm mad at the department. You know, it wasn't like architecture where they send you off for internships and all this kind of stuff. So I remember having this name, Dr. Joyce O'Rourke, and I was just like mad. Like, you guys have had me here, and I got this thing, and what do I do now? You know? And she, in her very Black Southern woman way, was like, kind of calm me down. And she was like, it's going to be okay. And asked me to come back and have a conversation with her when I was calmer, you know, because I was hot. And something really fortunate had happened during that last year. In Baton Rouge, there are two primary universities: the Southern University, which is HBCU, historically Black college university, and then there's LSU. And there was a British director who came to direct a show called Swine Palace at LSU. And LSU had an equity house. They also had an MFA program. And he was doing All the King's Men, which was really a sort of political drama that really dealt with the political and social fabric of Louisiana. And it was actually turned into a movie and starred like John Goodman decades later.
Yeah.
Beautiful film, beautiful script. And Barry Cobb was like, oh, if I want to create this story in the way that I want to create this story, the representation on these stages has to look like the representation of Louisiana, which is very African-American. And so he came and auditioned people at Southern University. And I got cast in the show. And it was the first time that I had been exposed to theater that was like on a professional level. Like, I'd done shows at Southern, but they were like, you know, they were college shows and they were rich. You know, there was a level of storytelling and embodiment and cultural excavation that happened at Southern University and support that would never have happened at LSU. And so when I go to LSU, I'm doing this show, and I'm like, oh shit. And then I find out that Louisiana has this system of cross-registration. So you can be at your primary university, but also register and take classes at another university without having to change universities. Because I was like, I want to matriculate from a HBCU. Mm-hmm. And when I found that out, I was like, I'm going to take classes. So I started taking classes at LSU with undergraduate and graduate students, with instructors that were teaching undergraduate and graduate students. It also made me eligible to audition for plays at LSU. Mm-hmm. So then I started getting cast in plays at LSU that were like graduate students and undergraduate students. And my art just expanded in these really incredible ways. And I'm really grateful for that. And so Southern gave me that opportunity. Louisiana gave me that opportunity to sink into my art. And while I was at LSU, I saw a notice board that had an advertisement for an audition for an educational theater company that was based in DC, but it was in New York. And this was around the time that I was graduating. So I take the thing down and I'm just like, I'm going to New York. And I go back to Dr. O'Rourke, I'm going to New York. I ain't got no plane ticket. I don't know where I'm staying, but I'm going, like I am going. And so she's like, well, if you go to New York, you should look up my friend Marjorie Moon at Billie Holiday Theater. And Marjorie Moon also happened to be the godmother to one of her daughters. And I called my friend Jennifer, who I grew up with, who went to NYU, who lived in New York. And she was like, yeah, you can stay with me. So I'm like, I'm going to be at there for a week. I'm doing these auditions. And I told my mother, like, I'm going and da-da-da-da. And she was like, and where you going to stay? And I was like, with Jennifer. And she knew Jennifer because Jennifer's dad and her had worked together. I think Jennifer's mom and my mom were like pregnant at the same time. Like it was a community thing, but they had moved from South Florida just as we were starting high school to Atlanta. And my mother was like, nope, you're not staying with Jennifer and her boyfriend. And she called Aunt May, who lived in the Bronx, in the South Bronx, May Saunders. And I went to stay in the Forest Houses projects in the South Bronx for a week. And long story short, Marjorie Moon ended up offering me a job as a production assistant. And I stayed in New York and I never went back home.
I think it's interesting, like, when you talk about, like, what are you going to do with something, like when you study in that space, and for one, there's whether you call it serendipity, the universe, etc., kind of that lines things up. But I think people are still trying to figure it out today, but we're also from the generation that stumbled through how you create a life. Let's call it a freelance life or a tapas lifestyle. Somebody called it once. Tapas lifestyle, where it's kind of like you're in creative spaces. But there's an understanding that there's lots of work in there. Like there's lots of positions. When people look at, for example, acting, they think about, how are you going to survive as an actor? Or if you're even in theater, like, how are you going to survive in theater? Because they only see the people that are on the stage, and don't recognize that there's literally an entire ecosystem that sits behind it. And I mean, when you're talking about it, I took my son to an open day for a institute they do like music or sound, gaming, film, and animation. And
where was this?
It's actually here in Rosebank.
That's the
because he wants to do sound. And I remember the people taking us around kind of very quickly realized that how I view it as a parent and how he views it is very different from a lot of the other parents. Because a lot of the other parents are just kind of like, oh, so he's going to sit and, it's like, oh, he's going to make music. Like, is that sustainable? or is he going to be a DJ?
Yeah,
but because of my experience, I'm like, I know you can take that, and there are countless other things that you can do with your life that don't rest on making a song and the song becoming popular.
Yeah.
And I think, I mean, I've kind of navigated that more in the last decade, but I think you and people like you serve as an example of what you can craft as a life, like a portfolio lifestyle.
Yeah, portfolio lifestyle, but still that. I think part of that is, I think part of it is the immigrant experience, you know, from my family, you know, this idea that you always have to figure it out. And that you always have that you do have the capacity, like there was never a doubt that one had the capacity to do. And I've always been really fortunate to be surrounded by people who opened doors and poured into me. And the universe does what it does. But Antonio has always been really good at recognizing an opportunity and stepping into it. And a lot of people just can't, won't, or don't. Like, they can't see it. They're too afraid of the thing. And I'm just like, what exactly is there to be afraid of? And that's happened sort of every step of my life. You know what I mean? When I think about basically like this New York situation, at like my 20s, I'd never lived in New York before. I'd never visited New York before. I'd never been on a New York subway system. I'd never been engaged in the professional world of theater. Like, but I knew that this was what I wanted and what I needed to be doing. I knew I made, but I ain't never lived what I made, you know. But the foundation that I had allowed me to engage with people regardless of where they were. And I think that part of that was just like listening and watching my mom as a community development person, mayors, sheriffs, parents, children, CEOs, the gamut, right? And she never treated any of these people with her high school education and unfinished college degree as if they were better and or different in any way. And she always, even until the time that my mother transitioned, she was continuing to work in communities and finding ways to bring people together and to do what local people considered to be impossible. And it was never hard work for her. It always moved with ease. People always showed up to support her in her work. She never had a problem with asking somebody to do something that she needed. She never asked for permission to do the things that she needed to be done, particularly to support our communities and our kids and our elders. Like, she was like, this don't make sense. Why isn't this happening? Okay, this is what we're gonna do. And so I think I have a bit of that. And I remember there was a moment, because my mother and I didn't always get along growing up, but my mother had this quality that I'm still aiming to make part of me. You were talking about gathering bits and pieces of people in your work. And so my mother had the capacity to change really quickly. She had the ability to let something go really quickly. And not in a sort of like, this is something she's just talking about, but it was like, she's like, if I'm done with it, she was like, oh, I'm done with it. She was done with it. Whether it was somebody's like a bad relationship, I'm done with that. And then they're cool, right? And so I have spent a good 25 years of my life trying to get just a little bit of that thing that she had. And it has served me really, really well. And so even moving to someplace like South Africa, I remember people going, you're moving to South Africa? And my issue wasn't about moving to South Africa and what this unknown could be. Mine was more about, how do I make sure I take care of myself while I'm here? Like, how do I add to where I'm going to and not subtract from it? That it not be a situation where It's so funny. I can't believe I used to think this way, but like there was a time that I wouldn't do roles that were considered South African because I was like, that's not my job. I was like, there are people here who are South African that can play those roles. I ain't trying to take nobody's job. There did reach a point where I was like, oh, I can play a version of South African because the multiplicity of what that means in this country, right? So I can't be like the rural guy from KwaZulu-Natal. Like my Zulu isn't that good. But I can be that guy whose parents are South African who left and came back and is struggling to understand the culture that he came from, that is struggling to reclaim the language of his mother and his father. That I can do authentically because I never wanted to be fraudulent in my work. You know,
but I think you also, like you built yourself to that.
Yes. Right? Yes, absolutely.
It wasn't someone I understand and I respect there are people here who can do that.
Yeah.
So I can't come in and pretend to be that when they're as capable, as talented people that can do that.
Exactly.
But it did feel like you built yourself into your lane, like your space.
Yeah.
And it wasn't an overnight thing.
No.
Because even the way you built a space, you created a space for yourself in the country was, I wouldn't say necessarily deliberate. I don't know whether it's deliberate, but it felt very organic and it felt very true to you and the space.
Yeah.
But what brought you here? Like, what was when do you wake up and go, I'm going to South Africa?
I'm going to answer that. Well, first, yes, it was organic, the building into the thing. And most of my life is very organic. But it's also the thing that I said before, like I've never been afraid to step through the door. And so what brought me to South Africa was, in retrospect, I've talked about this before, in retrospect, I was depressed. And so I was in the US. I graduated college in like 94. I moved to New York. And from like 94 to like 99, 2000, I just worked nonstop. Like literally, it was just like TV, film, theater, TV. It was just like, and what friends were just like, you always on something. And I was like, I was that dude. And then work slowed down and then work stopped. And I was like, the fuck? Like, I can't get a job? Like, what's going on? And I didn't, my agents were just kind of like, you're kind of like in this in-between age. When I started, I was like 23, but still able to play like 16 or something like that, And they're like, it's fine. You just have to be patient. I was like, patient? I want all the things now. I don't know what that means, right? And so, and at the time, for me, it's just like to be patient meant, so I must now wait to do the thing that I love. And then how am I eating? How am I paying rent while I'm waiting? Because representation will say these things so cavalierly, right? Because I was like, you're not housing me or feeding me. So there's some really economic things to this craft that I'm doing.
And so who are you waiting for?
Right. And in film and television, you're waiting for the director, the writer, the producer, the studio, the casting person to call you in and to give you a job, right? To say yes to your talent. And I've never been good at that, waiting for permission to do what I do. And so in that space, it was about a 2-year space. I tried everything. I started a new party called Soul Heaven LA at the time. And that went for a little while. I started working with writers in film and television to develop their work and bringing sort of theater practices of development into film and television, because I realized they didn't exist because writers were sitting in a room in a hovel somewhere, writing and not engaging, particularly if they weren't staffed on a show, right? And so I did that for a while. It's called Back to Back Thursdays. And I was just trying stuff, and nothing was working. And I was getting frustrated and I was getting sadder, right? And there was a moment where a dear brother friend of mine told me about a job that he booked. And so how life had existed up until that point, like I had this extraordinary community of artist friends, and we would help each other, we would celebrate each other. And he told me about this job, and inside I wasn't happy that he got the job. And I was like, what is that? Oh no. And I had made a promise to myself when I first moved to LA, because I moved to LA from New York, and that if I ever saw that thing in myself, I would leave. And I recognized it because when I first moved to LA, I would run into these elder brother artists who were just like, hey, brother, how you doing? What you working on? You know, and I would tell them, and you would see this look in their eye. You know,
you get cynical. You get cynical. You become bitter.
Yeah,
you're navigating all this stuff. Yeah,
it's like that's not. I was like, my soul will remain intact, and I think it was just like, it was really interesting because, you know, there were these lessons that I learned every step of the way in terms of my geographical movement and my expansion in my work. So when I left Louisiana and moved to New York, I was really clear about making sure that I stayed on my grind, and not like just working hard to be working hard, but like, I'm going to continue to expand. I'm going to continue to learn. I'm going to continue to build relationships and community. When I left New York to LA, the other thing was just like, I'm not going to be afraid of leaving LA. Because when I was in New York, I was always afraid of leaving New York because I was like, I'm going to miss an audition. Yeah. And so you're like, and inevitably, whenever you will book a trip to go somewhere, like, you get an audition, right? so I was like, I'm not going to be beholden to the industry in that way when I move to LA. And then in LA, I was like, oh, so New York is a place where I get my art on, but LA is where I'm learning about this business thing, and it is a beast. And my soul is more important than the beast. And so when I felt that thing, I was like, I gotta go. And I didn't know where I was gonna go. And I've been traveling a lot. I've been to Europe quite a bit of time. I visited South Africa like once before. And I was like, it's either gonna be the UK or it's gonna be South Africa. And I came back to visit both before I sort of made a decision. And I was like, I'm a son child, so it's definitely not going to be the UK. And it was wild because I made this decision to leave with no money, right? Because I hadn't been working, right? And a dear friend of mine, Milton Macretis, she's like my sister, South African, Greek South African. And she was like, just come. And I was like, Mirta, I can't just come. I was like, I don't have a place to live. I ain't got no job. I don't know what I'm be doing. And she was like, you can stay with us. And I was like, stay with who? She was like, no, I live at home with my parents. She went to USC, and we had worked together on her graduate film. And she'd always been talking about South Africa. And so that's what I did. So I made the commitment. I was like, okay, cool. Well, I'll stay with Mirta and her family. And I didn't know what I was going to do for work. I just knew I couldn't be in the U.S. And part of the reason why I couldn't stay in the U.S. was because all of my peers, we were right at that point. We were working actors, and everybody was kind of like starting to break through, right? And I was like, if I'm in the U.S. and I'm turning on the TV and I see my people, it's going to be so soul destroying. I was like, I can't put myself through that. And so that was like, that's why out of the country was the option as opposed to being in the country. And that's what happened. And so that's how I ended up in South Africa. Mirto's family incubated me for 9 months. Just as I was leaving, I booked a guest starring role on Karen Cisco. So I left knowing that a check was coming. And that's what seeded my life in South Africa. And I may have talked to you about this before, but every place I've ever lived, generally when I've moved someplace, I've been like, hey, I just tell my people like I'm going to this place. And then they, they'll connect you with good people. And that's what happened in South Africa. And so, but I'd spent 2 years in the US letting go of my career like on a sort of spiritual, psychological level, being like, I'm not going to be able to act in South Africa. I don't speak any local languages. I don't know what I'm going to do, but I know that I have to go. And God was like, you did all this work for 2 years. and I booked Hotel Rwanda.
Is that the first thing you did when you got here?
And I went, you got jokes. and I remember saying this prayer to God, like, I'm gonna do whatever you want me to do, but what I'm not doing is starting over. So if you want me to do this thing, apparently, then you're gonna put me where I was, at the level I was in my career in the US, or higher. And I'll do the work. You know? And that's what happened. So it was like Hotel Rwanda, and then it was Generations. And I didn't know what Generations was when I got cast. Like I knew format was, but I didn't know that it was like the most popular TV show.
The context, the significance. Yeah.
No, it was another job. Yeah.
I mean, because I think we met randomly. I think it was through Andile. Andile was doing something.
Halisura.
Yeah.
That was also like, wow, I saw her over festive, and it was so fulfilling. Like, I have so much love for that woman and so much admiration. And she's also like just sort of part of my early days. And we met because from the beginning I was involved in music, like tangentially and then more directly. And that's how she and I met, through Iggy with YFM. And then it was like the labels and the novels and the Koboons and that, you know, the whole ecosystem of Maisha, you know. But when I got ready to leave the US, like, you just can't plan some of this shit out. So in my sort of figuring out what to do when work isn't happening, I start this party, right? That became really popular. So now I'm a promoter, right? So like a promoter and a host of a party, right? And another party was having this Thanksgiving gift thing, whatever. So we go to that to support. This white woman is like, hey, I hear you moving to South Africa. I don't know you. I don't like, how do you know what I'm doing in my life? Right?
Yeah.
Her name was Lauren Siegel. She ran a thing called Next Aid that at the time was using electronic dance music to build awareness and resources for people infected and affected by HIV and AIDS, particularly children. And she started projects here in South Africa. And so she was like, hey, like, we're doing this project. Can you help us out? And I was like, sure. Like, what do you need? Oh, there's this DJ that we've been trying to connect with. And they're like, it'd be really helpful if you can help, you know, with that relationship. And like, if you can visit the kids, whatever, and everything. I was like, okay, cool. So I meet this guy, Troy Lilly. Do you know Troy?
No, I don't.
So Troy at the time was like the primary guy, which I didn't know at the time. It was like, he was a DJ, but he was also the primary guy that people would take their music to for mixing and mastering.
Okay.
And Troy was like such a curmudgeon, really sweet, dope musical ear, dope DJ. And we begin this friendship because I went to meet him for somebody else, right? And he invites me to his studio. And in his studio, we're like talking, I'm listening to music. I've always loved house music. Dance was my space. The party I was doing in LA was like a house music space. And I kind of had this idea about poetry and house music. And he was like, oh, we can play. And I was like, word? Like, let's get it. And so he plays some shit. And I'm like listening to it. And I write some things. And then we record. And then I go back to the US and come back. And while I'm away, he's like, yo, everybody's loving that song. All the guys are loving that song. And I got this chick to do some backing vocals on it or whatever. And it's like, it's really blowing up. And I was like, what guys? And like, what chick, right? So it was like Tamara Day did vocals. And at the time she was like, she couldn't quite do it. So then she was like named on the thing as like Miss Identity. She was using a pseudonym. And then, but he was mixing and mastering for like Mbuso and Revolution and everybody who was big at the time. And that's how it started. And then people were just like, yo, I heard you did this track with Troy. And then, can you do something on this track? Can you do something on this track? And then I connected with Iggy at YFM. And then and delay through that and everything. And that's how that kind of unfolded. It was wild. Like, you can't even plan it, but it was like, I just said yes.
I mean, it's that whole thing of kind of, serendipity, the universe, whatever you want to call it. Everybody that I talk to, and when I reflect also on my own life and my journey, you kind of look at these things and you go, I don't know how that happened. Like, I don't know. There's nothing I could have done. I could have planned. Like, I could have gone, okay, I'm going to do this and do this and do that and do that and do that. And I'm going to end up there. You kind of just look up and all of a sudden you're there.
But is that true? Do you just kind of look up and you're there?
I believe that I am where I'm supposed to be, doing what I'm supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
I'm not religious, so I don't follow any type of religion. So I don't have that as my,
guide.
That, like God created this, etc. Like, so, I mean, I'll loosely use the universe, like whatever it is, right? Yeah. I don't feel the need to define what that is because I'm still trying to make sense of it.
Yeah.
But it's just knowing that, and I've become better at it as I've gotten older, that, you know what, I'll be fine. The thing to do is to focus on, I focus on what's right in front of me. And if it makes sense, and just kind of take it as it comes. To a certain extent, the way it's unfolded for you, I also take that approach. It's like, there's something in front of me.
Yeah. In
this moment, does it feel like it makes sense? If it does, then I'll do it. I don't overthink it. Like, I don't think, oh, where's it going to take me? Because I grew up with a plan. I always had 2-year plans and 5-year plans and 10-year plans. And it took me a long time to kind of just discard all of those. And, being in our 50s now, it's like, I'm not building a career, right? So I'm really just kind of focusing on what's right in front of me. But for years, it's felt very like, I'll look back on things and I'm like, that's so random. Like, I'll be in, at home in Maseru, sitting with my friends outside a butchery, with them kind of burning some meat on the grill. And then 2 weeks later, I'm sitting in Shanghai, in a press conference with Pharrell. I'm just kind of like, okay.
But it's not random. Even when it feels like, and I know what you mean when you say it, because I often feel those things, but I have to remind myself, and in this moment, that it's this intersection of preparation and opportunity, right? And preparation on so many levels, right? It's the spiritual work that you're doing. It's the psychological work that it's doing. It's the things that you're doing with your body. It's the relationships that you're building. It's how you're engaging with people in the world. It is all part of the process, and is all a part of the toolbox that is utilized to create moments where you can step through a door, right? Like this weekend, I had a moment, you remember Carl Collinson?
Yeah.
Photographer, writer, brilliant. I ran into him in Durban, right? I wasn't supposed to fucking be in Durban, right? And so it's that sort of preparation opportunity. What the preparation was that I work and I save money, right? And I work and I save money because I want to be able to do the things that I want to do in my life when I want to do them, right? So those resources are available. I'm having a conversation with Maxwell Beloy, who last year released this amazing jazz album. And still is, he's my music supervisor, and he's my musical muse as a pianist, and we've collaborated a lot together. So we were supposed to get together on this past Saturday. Fenella, like somewhere Wednesday, like, hey, I'm not going to be able to see you on Saturday. This gig just came up. It's going to be in Durban at the Chairman. Now, anybody who knows me knows I love the ocean. I love the beach, and I love Durban. And also I think for me on a spiritual level is like, it's really hard for me to start the year without going to the ocean, to put my feet in it, to release the year that has been, to welcome the year that is here. Like I always start my year that way. Within the first 2 weeks, I got to make it to the ocean. I don't care where I am in the world. So I'd already been kind of like, I need to make it to the ocean. I need to make it to the ocean. So Max says this thing, and I was like, oh, what's the gig? He's like, I'm doing a gig at the Chairman with some guys. Okay, bet. When are you going? When are you coming back? I'm going on Saturday morning. I'm coming back on Sunday. You just one night? Never crossed my mind to ever go to Durban for one fucking night, right? So I was like, I want to see Max do his thing, right? Like, I just love him. And I was just like, and I get to touch the ocean. Cool. I was like, I'm gonna come through and see the show, like to see you guys, right? So like, cool, bet. So I buy this ticket. I book a room. When I tell you the affordability of this trip, Southern Sun was like, in Langeni was like 113 for the night. South African Airways had like a round trip ticket for like 100 US. I was like, oh, we going, we getting in the wind, right? And so I book the ticket, I go. I link up with this brother that used to be here in Joburg in production, to Baffoe Peterson, who was then at the Durban Film Office or whatever. So we reconnect. He's like, oh, let's go to Klanga Rocks. I get the beach in. This is all Saturday morning. I get an 8-something flight in the morning. Off to Durban I go. So we do that, grab some lunch. We having conversations about things I needed to have conversations about, but preparation, right? So I'm here on holiday. I'm in a space of like, say yes, you have the resources to pay, to pay the thing. Everybody I'm engaging with are friends who I have continued to stay in communication with over the years. Not every day, not even once a month, but there's intentionality around relationship maintenance, right? Like if you love your people, you love your people, even if it's random, right? Preparation, right? So you're received well wherever you go, and you're consistently who you are. So we do all of that. We leave there. I go to my hotel. I check on some stuff. He's like, yo, I need to run and do this thing. And I'm like, okay, cool. I was like, actually, I'm kind of hungry too now. So he does an errand he needs to do. And then I'm like, yo, is that Kauai? We're like Florida Road, going to the Kauai. Walk out of Kauai. And there is sitting Carl Collinson, who I have not seen in over a decade. And I was like, wow. We always remain in communication. On the socials you be watching, I'm like, yo, this thing you're doing with this retreat is like really done. There's residencies that are happening. These documentaries that you're doing, there's ways in which you're uplifting queer stories. Like, he's like on fire, right? But it's all preparation. And saying yes to when the doors open for something. And you don't know where it's going to take you. And I don't think that it's important that we know, because I do think that it's about each moment building on the next. And I feel like as an actor, that's very much the way that I live my life, but also how I do my work, right? So if you're in a scene with somebody, you may rehearse, you may learn your lines, but the magic only happens if you're really there and you allow this exchange to happen one breath at a time. Because you don't know what the other person is going to do, and you can't plan it. And it's even more beautiful when you don't, because then you respond from an authentic place. And I feel like the universe, your path, whatever, does the same thing. It's waiting for you to just be present and to take those steps. And then the road will just continue to unfold. And you're always going to have a choice about which direction to go. But it's all going to be good because you've already done the preparation. Like, I never understand, like, people are like always in these sort of worlds in their life where there's just drama, right? And people are like, I don't know how this is happening to me. I know exactly how it's happening to you.
Yeah.
You have, as long as I've known you, you have stayed in a place of like encouraging chaos in your life. You have not prepared your inner world nor your outer world for any type of peace or joy. And apparently something's working for you in that. And so I ain't mad at it for you. So I'm just like, well, get it. If that's what you want to do and it's continue to do and that work for you, because I can't function that way, but you can. I know people who function really well in chaos. Antonio can't do it. If you ever see me in some chaotic situation, I seem like I'm okay, it's a mask.
Yeah.
No, I am requiring you, my friend Kojo, to pull me up out of that as best you can. To be like, hey, let's take a walk away from your chaos for like just 5 minutes so you can just breathe for a second and realize that this is not your norm.
Some of your work feels very heavy.
A lot of it.
I was being polite.
So much so, like I can't even watch heavy shit now.
But how do you how do you stay grounded within that? Because you're tapping into kind of very deep parts of you, and very, very heavy parts of the world we live in, the societies we live in, the challenges that we have. But you also need to be grounded. You need to be fine to a certain extent to be able to engage with it. Like, how do you find that grounding?
It's a big question, but so it's part of it has always existed. So, and so for grounding for me, at the core of that is awareness, like who you are, where you are, whose you are, why you are. From an early child, I had a really clear awareness that life, this experience that we walk through, these things that we sort of touch, is not real. Like it's really a dream, and that there's this other world or part of existence that is just beyond this that we're trying to get to. It's kind of the sense that, and it used to scare the shit out of me as a child, because I would literally be in a reality moment like here, and then it'd be like maybe like Star Wars or Star Trek or some shit would be on, and then I'll start thinking of it. They'll say like a year, because Star Trek used to love that, what year they were in the future. And I'll start calculating how far that is and how old I would be. And I'd be like, I'd be dead. Do you know what I mean? Basically, it was very morbid, right? So, and then it would send me into a panic, right? And then I'd be kind of like feeling like I couldn't wake up from life. And it doesn't happen that much anymore. There are still moments where it does happen, this sort of hyper awareness about this duality of existence. And so one, I realized that anchors me in a place of like a hyper awareness of myself and connection with others. And so I don't take any of it for granted. Right? And then the other part of that is my spiritual life, my spiritual work, right? And so I'm a child of Ifa, which is a Yoruba tradition of African spirituality. And there's this understanding that I am my ancestors. My ancestors are here with me all times and always. And I can stand firmly in that truth and that power. And that's constantly reinforced by the people in my life in terms of bloodlines, about the family that I've created, in terms of knowing that the system of support is always there. And before that, early on in my career, I was in LA in Bill Duke's first Actors Boot Camp. And Bill would take us through these grounding exercises. It was the first time that I had a instructor or a teacher that talked about the preparation work that you do before you go into character. So the prayers that you pray, the acknowledgement about where you're going, the portals that you're opening up, and the desire that you have to come back to yourself on the other side. And when that work is done, to also have those spirits on the other side, that those portals be closed and that you be safe and you come back to yourself. Right. And so that has consistently been a part of my practice since I was 25, 26. And so that continues to undergird along with my spiritual path and my spiritual walk. And I'm also I'm always kind of very conscious and aware of what's happening for the most part. And so I don't really consume a lot of documentaries. In this current political social climate, I can't watch the news. Visual and audio things coming at me at the same time impact me in ways that if I read something, it doesn't. I'll still feel a little something, but there's something about the visual audio image together that fucks with me. And I'm just we're not doing that. So I'm very protective of how I consume media now. And so if I really want to sort of just kind of decompress, I'm looking at anime. I love animation. I love anime, which is a lot of people just oh, it's so frivolous, whatever. But I find that most Japanese anime have such rich stories happening on multiple levels.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so, but it's my goal. I can binge for hours, anime. Yeah. So I regulate what it is that I put into my body. On all the levels.
I mean, I'm kind of in the middle of trying to make sense of that as we start a year, because I know that, I know how some of those things impact me, on a very kind of subtle underlying level. I remember years ago when I was really active on Elon Musk's Twitter. before it became Elon Musk Twitter, or X, and I remember at the time I had a moment where I realized that if I went on before 10 o'clock, it shaped my day. And what was happening is that I'd get on, and without fail, there's going to be. It wasn't as toxic as it feels now, but without fail, somebody's going to be complaining about something. And that would literally shape my day because it impacted on my thinking. And so I recognize that. But at the same time, I'm more a consumer on TikTok than a creator or a poster. And because of the stuff that I look at, the algorithm, it's American politics, it's geopolitical stuff, it's what's happening in China, then it's football because, I like football, and then it's music. Yeah. But because of the way the world is right now, some of the stuff just makes me angry, or it makes me sad.
It should.
Or it makes me frustrated. And realizing that it's counterproductive for me because it affects how I, I'm now sitting consuming this stuff and I'm feeling a particular way when I could actually be doing certain things that I want to do.
Yeah.
I could be writing, or I could be, creating something. And it's not only taking time, it's sapping kind of part of my energy. And right now I'm just trying to figure out, or I'll end up playing a game on my phone and it ends up being 2 hours later. And I do that, I play games on my phone as a way of relaxing. But then there's a point where, I was journaling about it actually this morning. There's a point where it's okay, now it's too much time. There's that I'm doing it to relax, great.
Yeah.
But 3 hours later, that's just it's a waste of, even if it's 2.5 hours. If I did it for 30 minutes,
it's one thing.
I'd be cool.
Yeah.
So I'm actually right in the middle of just trying to figure out what that looks like. Having, to a large extent, unplugged from, I was very active kind of in this digital world. and I've by and large unplugged from most of those spaces.
Mm-hmm.
But what's left is still having, like, I'm still trying to make sense of how I fit it into just being me.
It's insidious. It's a time suck. I get that with the games too, and I'll say things to myself like, just one more, just one more round, and I was like, you have so much that you need to be doing right now. This one more round is, and I noticed that there's something that they build into the games, and I don't know if you noticed, but like when you're playing the game, you can't see the time.
Yeah.
Like you can't, like you literally, you have to close the game to see the time. In other apps on your phone, you can always see the time.
See the time at the top, yes.
Right, and so there's an intentionality behind it, and so I try to be conscious of that for myself as well, because you can be playing a game, you're like, why is it like 12 o'clock? Why is it 2 o'clock in the morning?
Look, right? I had that last night.
You know what I mean? And then you wake up and you're like, why am I tired? Well, because you didn't sleep. You know what I mean? And so I struggle with those things as well. So that's real, in terms of the game thing. But I do like Instagram, I do like Facebook, but I'm not on anything regularly. I'm usually posting like way after the thing, and if I get sucked into watching some dance thing or whatever it is, there's always this point, which I'm really happy about ego in this moment. There's always this point where I'm just like, why are you consuming this content? You need to go and making your own content. Meaning that there's some part of the show I need to be working on. There's something creative that I need to be doing and can be doing of my own, that I'm like, they getting their money right now. Like, why am I watching this award speech? They got their award. Like, you supposed to be doing your work, so you can go get yours too. If that's what's in alignment for you, right? And so I like being able to give myself some of the ego part, giving myself some of those reality checks, because I think that it's really important. And then now it's like, what am I really promoting, right? And so I will spend more time helping to promote things for entities that I'm working for than for myself. And I think that that's okay for now. And I think they're at a point where I feel like I need it for myself. Then I think I'll hire somebody to do that, or try to partner with somebody to do that, so that I'm not like sucked into the thing again. Because there are people who actually really enjoy it.
Yeah.
The other thing that I think that is really important for me is that even though sometimes when I look at the stuff, it makes me sad or angry, I don't want to tap out, because I know people who do. Like, they don't know what's going on in the world. And I was like, the stakes are too high, and people have fought and died too much for me to be here to not always be thinking about, like, how am I moving the needle forward? And if I'm not moving the needle forward, how am I creating space to hold people that are actively out there doing that work? And that's one of the things I really love about where I'm in my life, because, the U.S. at the moment is quite toxic, and it's been toxic and pulling at your psyche in various ways for quite some time. And I get to work within two spaces that actively allow me to push back against the toxicity. Yeah. Right. So at the foundation, while the core work is to preserve and promote the legacy of Valerie Maynard, the other part of that work is nurturing and mentoring and skills transference. So we're training the next generation of arts practitioners as memory workers, as archivists, as curators, and legacy work. So, and it's so wild to be in this space at a moment where, like, there's all this erasure that's happening, that I get to be engaged in preservation. I get to be in a home of a visual artist whose core work was loving on Black people. She was a premier artist within the Black arts movement, and she continued to do that work up until the day that she transitioned. And you have young people who come through this space who are like, I feel like I know her because of the work in this space, because of these experiences that I'm having with people who've known her for like 50 years, with being able to engage with her archives, with being able to engage with her art practice, to like touch and be tangible and be thinking really critically about how do we take care of this thing. That feeds me in so many ways. And it's incredible. And then to go to Georgetown, and as much as it's an institution in its own political creature, but I literally get to go into a room and craft an intervention or craft a workshop that's about building and having dialogues about difference. You know, having people sort of sit in themselves and explore and figure it out and be in conversation with each other and feel held in a space where they can be their authentic and real selves and have difficult conversations. Like, that's what I get to do. And that's fulfilling, you know? And so every time I hear the things, I'm reminded it's going on, but you're doing the work. You know, and then I get to create my own work as an artist as well. Like, I'm working on a new show right now that I'll do when I get back to the U.S. that's about grief and healing. That's set between sort of U.S., South Africa, and Cuba, and that continues to feed me. And I know that through that work, like, other people will get something out of it. Like, they'll see a reflection, they'll see an understanding of something that is so intimate. That it's really hard to express, you know, when you go through that, particularly when you go through the loss of a parent. The show deals with sort of I lost three mothers. I lost my mom, I lost my second mom, my stepmom, and I lost Valerie, who was like my art mom. She like raised me in a whole different way in New York. And that grief has been profound, and it's shifted and changed me forever. And it continues to impact, you know? And so, but to be able to sort of be with them on this journey as well through this show is like another part of the process. Curious about who I'll be on the other side. but that's the work, and I'm really happy that I get to engage in that work.
That's it's a beautiful and powerful, I'd say, outlet. When you talk about kind of navigating and dealing with grief, like, and this is a conversation I often have, because for a very long period, like, my father was my only parent. My mother passed when I was 1. And there's the grief related to that I only kind of made sense of when I was much, much older. But losing like him physically transitioning, and then 3 years later, Gerard transitioning, forced me to deal with death in a very different way and grief in a very different way. Because in a weird way, it was an explanation as to why my mother wasn't there. And because I come from a family where I'm the white sheep of the family, I was my mother's only child. She was an explanation as to why I was a different complexion. And because I don't remember her, like, in terms of, you know, what she looked like, moments, what she smelled like, her touch. My relationship with death and by extension grief was, explanation. You know, this is my brother. How is your brother? Different mothers. Oh, okay. Oh, why are you so light? My mother was white. Oh, okay. It was just an explanation. A fact. Yeah. But those two transitioning was the first time I had to really kind of confront and make sense of the void that a person leaves. Then make sense of, okay, then, like, how do I live? How do I go beyond that?
And it's not just a void, like, it's a part of you that they take with them.
Yeah. Because so my thing was, it's going to leave this, and like you're saying, it's a part they take they take with them, but it leaves this little gap, leaves this little void that'll never be filled. You know, because there's the different things like time heals, etc., etc. And it's like, for me, it's I have and I continue to learn how to live with that as being, in inverted commas, my new normal.
Your new normal,
right? It's not going to go away, or it's not going to come back and be refilled. But it's just learning that, you know what, it's all right.
Yeah.
Like, it's all right. I'm all right. I keep going. Like every other experience that we've had, but in this particular instance, and that forced me to really kind of deal with it and confront it.
Yeah.
So that's why I say it must be a powerful and beautiful way of kind of navigating that, going through that, I guess, creative, emotional, physical, mental, spiritual process of creating something that also helps you navigate that journey.
Because the creation is a remembrance. You know, it's a remembrance, and it is making anew as well, and at the same time. And this show is like, it's difficult because when my mom died, I still had my stepmom and Valerie. So she transitioned in 2017, and those two warrior women helped me through that process, and a good therapist. Because therapy is real and it is valuable and necessary at times. And then Valerie and my stepmom transitioned the same year. And when my mom transitioned, I felt unmoored. Like there was no stable ground anywhere. I was like, I don't know who the fuck I am. I don't know who I'm gonna be. And but then when my stepmom transitioned and Valerie, I felt I no longer had any safety nets. Like, who would hold me in her absence? And then you learn you must hold yourself. And you recognize, if you're lucky, that it is a transition, and that Ache, power, that they still will hold you, that you can still tap into that energy, and it will move you forward, you know. And so that those have been really powerful lessons.
So mine has been, I had two people that I talked to all the time. So I was my father's sounding board from a very young age. So, I mean, I worked for my father. So a lot of it was work related. And my moving to Joburg, which was a great disappointment for him because I was supposed to take over the family businesses. And I was home and I worked. Like I moved back home after university. I worked. I was there full time. And then some stuff happened in Lesotho, and I was like, I need a change of scenery. I was like 27 years old. You know, but my life was built around working in and therefore taking over the family businesses. And, you know, raising the family and always being there for the family. And we had kind of political issues, and I was just like, yo, man, I can't. And I came to Joburg. But because of that, our relationship evolved. But we talked every week. Like, we'd be on the phone and like intellectual and my father's son, because, you know, 15, 16 years old, you're watching TV, you're watching the news, and you're having discussions, intellectual discussions. And a lot of my education came from my father. Like going to university just created that, the base for it. But I had a lot of that from my father through the things that he talked about, the experiences that he had in his life. And then G and I talked every day. Sometimes like it would be 2-3 hours by the end of the day. And often, I'm trying to decide something and I phone him and I talk to him about this thing. I already know what I want to do and he's going to contradict everything. He just forces me to, like, I'll get irritated because he's forcing, and like, in my heart of hearts, I know what I want to do. But I'm going to talk it out loud and he'd be like, okay, what about this? What about that? And I'm like, dude, no, this is the thing that I should be doing.
Yeah.
But after he transitioned, and I always say his was harder than my father's. Because my father was on the cusp of 82 years old.
Yeah.
He still wasn't even 40. But I had to learn how to have those conversations internally on my own. With no more having a sounding board to speak it out, just to start, to make sense of it.
Yeah.
And I mean, I still haven't figured it out, but like for a long time, that was like the first year, that's the thing I struggled with.
How has your family, meaning your wife and your kids, helped you navigate the grief space? I mean, I
don't know that they have.
Like their existence or presence hasn't.
I mean, like they each, for example, with Gerard in particular, but also my father, obviously, but each one of them has been trying to make sense of it for themselves. I mean, like my son Kweku is close to them. My daughter was also close to them, but him and Kweku also had a really close relationship. And you remember, G, like he had a certain energy and a certain way of interacting with people. And he was going to be my children's godfather. I mean, and kind of not in any other sense other than if anything ever happened to myself and Estelle, like he was the person that was going to raise my children.
Yeah, I see.
Because our values, my understanding of him as a human being, I was like, like that's who he would raise my children with, the same kind of spirit and energy and values and intent that I have. The thing about my family is like I have, and I operate with this idea that I have a responsibility and a duty to my family. And therefore, I wouldn't say they've necessarily, like them being there has helped me with the grief. Because just like I had a duty and a responsibility in relationship with my father and with G, I have it with them. And so to a certain extent, it doesn't matter what I'm navigating over here.
Yeah.
I still need to make sure that to the best of my ability, I mean, if you ask them, I probably don't do it the way they see that it should be done. But to the best of my ability, I can't let that impact on what I am doing here.
I get it.
So I also compartmentalize really well, but I could kind of compartmentalize life and in the internal stuff, where it's like, okay, I could be miserable, but I'm always going to show up here in the best way possible.
Yeah.
Because that is my it's what I have to do. There's no logic to it or whatever. It's like, no, that's my responsibility. That's my duty. And therefore I'm going to fulfill it.
Yeah, I was curious because, you know, my mom transitioned. I wasn't married yet. I was single. And my brothers were married with kids. And so there was this point where I was just kind of like, you know, I absolutely considered suicide. Like, why do I need to be here? You know, because I didn't realize until my mother transitioned that so much of my life there was this unconscious thing in the back of my mind, even though I'm like a grown ass man in the world, that her witnessing, her approval, I didn't know that was still a thing until she transitioned. And I was just like, well, why am I doing any of this? Like, do I need to be here? You know, and I always kind of felt like, because my brothers had families and they weren't alone, that could ground them, and keep them here.
Yeah.
And so that's why therapy ended up being something really important. That's my friend family network was really important. My friend Erica was just like, you need to talk to somebody. Like, she called me one day. I don't know, I hadn't been answering the phone, and she got me one day, and she was just like, so you need to see somebody, friend. You know, you know, I can suggest some people. If you can afford it, I got you. But you, sir, actually, where are you right now? I'm coming over. You know? And so I've never really asked my brothers about like what anchored them in a way. Like, we've had like conversations about, like, my middle brother was like, you know, he interpreted sort of the feelings that I have about my mother's loss as like regret or missing her in ways that were tied to something else, like some childhood trauma or something. And he seemed to sort of think that it was also tied to me not being present when she transitioned finally. And I was like, no, that's not it. This is something in my core.
Yeah, but it's interesting because like when you say it, like, it's understanding that we're working with different lenses. Yeah. Right. Because I was thinking about it, crossed my mind yesterday, day before yesterday. I'm reading a book on journaling. You know, journaling is my whole thing, and I'm trying to make it a thing. Well, go beyond just doing it and start to. And I ran a workshop recently where I took some people through, you know, the process of writing and journaling, and that's one area that I'm busy exploring in terms of kind of going beyond just like I'm doing it for me. Yeah. But I was reading this book and I can't remember what the prompt was or what the essay was, but I remembered being suicidal as a teenager. And realizing that I do not, like, all of those feelings, I haven't seen anybody, I haven't talked it through, etc. But all of those feelings are gone because I have a family. Like, it's, I cannot fathom doing that
to them.
It's not even to them. It's like, I need to be here for them. So it's not even kind of like how they're going to feel about it or whatever. It's like, no, like, I've got stuff I need to do for them. And until I feel I've done that, and I have no control over it, right? Like, I also recognize that, right? I have no control, and I'm not sitting assuming that I'm going to be here for the next 40 years or 50 years. Like, if it's tomorrow, then they're just going to have to deal with it like the rest of us deal with life, right?
Thanks, Kojo.
But kind of, when I have the conversations with myself, it's like, okay, this is where each one of them is from my wife, to both of my kids. If I could get another, sometimes I sit and go, if I can get another 10 years, I'll be able to have done these things for them. Then I'm good. Then, yeah, if it's my time, it's my time.
Yeah.
But ideally, first prize is this number of years.
Yeah.
Second prize is this number of years. Yeah. So it's, in a way, that little suicidal, those little inclinations kind of went when I had a reason. And when you're describing it, it's like, I've never, and which is probably what's happened with your brother, it's like, I don't understand what it looks like from that side.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to interpret it a particular way.
Yeah.
But just like you were asking me, now I'm thinking about it. I'm I got a job to do.
Yeah.
Exactly. I've got a job to do. And I need to be here to do that job.
Yeah. And it's like when you don't just have a purpose, but a purpose that is so anchored in something that's beyond yourself. That it's, you know what I mean? Often when you're single, you're like, your purpose is it's very sort of selfishly driven.
Yeah.
There's these things I want to do, but there's always, when I work with young men, I call it this healthy accountability that young men often need in ways that girls don't. Like, you need to know that there is this thing that is so important that's beyond yourself, that if you fuck that up, none of it is worth it.
Yeah.
And your family is that thing, you know what I mean? And so, I think for me, my mom was that thing. And, but I didn't know that she was that thing. That your family's that thing. And, so it's been a really interesting and powerful journey, and now being married, my husband, he doesn't take that place, but there is a sense of responsibility for this thing that we've created, that's really powerful and important as well.
And my last question is usually, so what's exciting you?
What's exciting me? There are lots of things that are exciting me. The foundation. I've built things, but I've never built anything like this. It has such a blend of benchmarks and milestones that are similar to the creative moment when you give birth to a thing, particularly when you're on stage, because you get instant gratification because you see it all happening. I get now why my mother poured so much into community. It's a powerful thing to know that you have created a container, provided information, provided a pathway for people to excel and see that thing. Foundation excites me in ways that I'm quite surprised by. It's been a lot of work. It also, I often tell people that the work that I do at the foundation is an extension of the care that I had for Valerie in life. And I won't always be there. I'm very clear and really thinking who will be the next person that takes over from me. I don't want us to be an organization like so many Black organizations where people who are positional power stay for way too long and they don't build a legacy plan. They don't, what does succession look like? They don't know because they're not they're more worried about how do I use this thing to continue to stack my wallet?
Yeah.
And so that's exciting me. Being in South Africa has been very exciting. Before I came, I hadn't been in 3 years, but I hadn't been able to connect with my people in a real kind of way in a longer period of time. The last time I came was for my husband's stepfather's funeral, so permanently I didn't get a chance to really connect with people. So being here now, I didn't know I didn't know what my relationships would be like after being so long. Like you think but you like, people have busy lives. Everybody's, everybody got children who are children are like adults, various stages. People are, and then you hope that the connection that you experience is real. It's like still really real. So this has been really great for me. It's been inspiring to connect with my people. That a place that I think of as home still feels like home, even with all its changes. That the same hope that I had for South Africa, like when I first moved to South Africa, I was just like, South Africa got a lot of fucking problems. You know what? It's a great fucking country. Getting a lot right in comparison to places that are far more developed. When I look at, the sort of the U.S. span and where it's going, what's happening. Latin America, it's pretty scary out there, but it's exciting that South Africa continues to grapple with the fullness of itself.
Yeah.
That there is large public discourse about all of it, present moment and the histories, and people don't run away from it. They don't shy away from it. You can't pretend it's not here. Whether it's GBV, like whatever it is, that discourse is real and people are actively pushing back and actively trying to do something different at every level. People who seem to have nothing are still like, we're going to protest and you will hear us and you will see us, and for me, that feels like such a healthy and beautiful place to be as any society on it. So the excitement is still exists and I can tap into that. And also think that it's fodder for creativity. And so that continues to inspire me in that way. You don't have, you're going to figure something out. At least you're going to be leaning in that direction of trying to figure something out, the resources to make it happen. And being here working on the show has been really exciting because I've been able to collaborate with people that I really love. Like right now I'm working with Rafile Lapiri and Itumaleng, and they're just extraordinary humans with like beautiful vision, and we can collaborate so well together. And then their turn, like they were like, oh, you need a video thing done? Okay, well, let me connect you with this person that's operating some stuff out of Tembisa. I'm like, we're in Tembisa. Do you know what I mean? Like these expansions just continue. And so that's exciting. And I have a grandniece. Her name is Sanaa. And look kind of cool.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this conversation. Please leave a review and subscribe. Check out the show notes for links to the guest, the podcast, and myself. I hope you enjoyed listening to the conversation as much as I enjoyed having it.